The mining ship Stellar Drift floated silently through the endless black of space. Its engines hummed softly, pulling it through an asteroid field near the edge of human territory. Jace, a lean man with messy black hair and oil-stained hands, leaned over a control panel in the engine room. He was the ship's mechanic, always tinkering, always fixing. At 28, he'd spent half his life keeping old ships like this one alive. The crew called him the Gear Whisperer because he could fix anything with a wrench and a bit of grit. Today felt different, though. The ship's scanners had picked up something strange, a faint signal from a drifting object. Captain Milo, a gruff man with a gray beard, had ordered Jace to check it out. Probably just space junk, Milo grumbled over the comms. But if it's salvageable, we could use the credits. Jace didn't mind. He liked puzzles, and space was full of them. He suited up in his worn spacesuit, grabbed his toolkit, and floated out through the airlock. The object came into view, a small, sleek craft, unlike anything human-made. Its hull shimmered with a faint golden glow, even in the dim light of distant stars. It wasn't junk. It was alien. Jace's heart raced as he approached. The craft's side was torn open, exposing wires and strange glowing panels. He tethered himself to it and peered inside. That's when he saw her. A figure slumped in the pilot's seat, her golden skin catching the light. She was alive, barely. Her breathing was shallow, and one leg was twisted at an odd angle, covered in a sticky, blue substance that must have been blood. "Hey, you okay?" Jace called through his helmet's comms, knowing she probably wouldn't understand. Her eyes fluttered open, sharp and yellow like a cat's. She flinched, reaching for something, a weapon, maybe, but her hand fell limp. She was too weak to fight. "I'm not here to hurt you," Jace said, raising his hands. He pointed to his toolkit. "I fix things. Let me help." She stared, unblinking, then nodded slowly. Trust wasn't there yet, but necessity was. Jace pulled himself into the craft. Up close, she was even more striking. Her skin wasn't just gold, it shimmered like liquid metal, shifting with every breath. She wore a tight, silver suit that hugged her slender frame, torn at the leg where she'd been hurt. He couldn't tell her age, but her face had a quiet strength, even in pain. He knelt beside her. "Your leg's a mess. I can't fix your ship if you're bleeding out." He didn't know if she understood, but he opened his kit and pulled out a scanner. It beeped, showing a fracture and torn muscles, not too different from a human injury. "I'm no doctor, but I've patched up worse on the crew. Hold still." She tensed as he touched her leg, her breath hitching. Jace moved carefully, cleaning the blue blood with a cloth and wrapping a bandage around the wound. The fracture needed more, though. He remembered an old trick from his mining days, massaging a strained muscle to ease the swelling. "This might hurt a bit," he warned, then pressed his thumbs into her calf. She gasped, her yellow eyes widening. Jace froze, thinking he'd messed up, but then she relaxed. The tension in her leg melted under his hands. He kept going, working the knots out with steady pressure. It was strange, her skin felt cool, almost buzzing under his touch, like it was alive in a way human skin wasn't. After a few minutes, she flexed her foot and muttered something in a soft, clicking language. "Better?" Jace asked. She nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She pointed to herself and said, "Lyra." Her voice was musical, like wind chimes. Jace grinned. "I'm Jace. Nice to meet you, Lyra." He sat back, wiping his hands. "Now, about your ship," he glanced at the damaged controls. Sparks flickered from a cracked panel. "I can fix it, but it'll take time. You're stuck with me for a while." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. She didn't speak again, but her eyes softened. Whatever she was running from, she seemed to decide Jace wasn't part of it. Back on the Stellar Drift, the crew gathered in the mess hall. Milo scratched his beard, eyeing Lyra as Jace helped her limp aboard. "An alien, huh? What's she doing out here?" he asked. Lyra stayed quiet, clutching a small pouch at her waist. Jace shrugged. "She's hurt, and her ship's dead. That's all I know so far." Milo sighed. "Fine. Fix her ship, but keep an eye on her. We don't need trouble." The crew murmured agreement. Nia, the sharp-eyed pilot, and Tor, the burly cook, both nodded. They'd seen stranger things in space. As Jace led Lyra to a spare bunk, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Her ship wasn't random wreckage. Something, or someone, had attacked it. And that pouch she guarded so closely. It wasn't just a trinket. Trouble was coming, and Jace's simple act of kindness had pulled him right into it. The stellar drift hummed through the asteroid field, its engines groaning under the strain of extra weight from Lyra's damaged craft, now tethered to the hull. Jace worked in the cargo bay, his toolkit spread out across the floor. Sparks flew as he patched the alien ship's power core, his hands moving with the confidence of someone who'd spent years coaxing life from broken machines. Lyra sat nearby, her golden skin catching the dim light. She watched him silently, her yellow eyes sharp and curious. Jace wiped sweat from his brow and glanced at her. "Your ship's a beauty, even busted up like this. Never seen tech so alive." He tapped a glowing wire that pulsed like a heartbeat. Lyra tilted her head, then spoke in her soft, clicking tongue. She paused, as if searching for words he'd understand. "Vorn," she said finally, her voice low. "They come." "Vorn?" Jace frowned, setting down his wrench. "Who's that?" Lyra clutched the pouch at her waist, her fingers tightening. She pointed out the bay's small window, toward the endless black of space. "Bad. Strong. Hunt me." Her English was broken, but the fear in her eyes was clear. Jace's stomach twisted. He'd seen that look before, on miners caught in cave-ins, on crewmates during pirate raids. Whoever these Vorn were, they'd hurt her, and they weren't done. Before he could ask more, the ship lurched violently. Tools clattered across the floor, and red lights flashed overhead. Captain Milo's voice crackled through the comms. "All hands, brace. We've got incoming." Jace grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her to her feet. "Come on, we're not safe here." She limped after him, her legs still weak but better than before, thanks to his massage. They reached the bridge just as Nia, the pilot, spun in her chair. 3 ships, closing fast. They're not human, too sleek, too quiet. Tor lumbered in, a frying pan in one hand and a pistol in the other. "Pirates," he growled. Milo stared at the scanner, his face grim. "Worse. Look at those weapons. Military grade." Jace glanced at Lyra. "Vorn?" She nodded, her breath quickening. The viewscreen flickered, showing 3 jagged ships, black as coal with glowing red lines running along their hulls. They moved like predators, darting between asteroids with eerie precision. A harsh voice boomed through the comms, speaking a language of sharp hisses and growls. Lyra flinched, whispering, "They want crystal." She patted her pouch. Jace's mind raced. Whatever was in there, it was worth killing for. "We can't outrun them," Nia said, her hands flying over the controls. "They're too fast." Milo cursed. "Then we fight." "Jace, get those turrets online." Jace hesitated, looking at Lyra. "Stay here. Help Nia if you can." She nodded, limping to the co-pilot's seat. Her fingers moved over the alien symbols on her pouch, as if praying. Jace sprinted to the turret bay, sliding into the gunner's chair. The controls were old, but he knew them like the back of his hand. He powered up the cannons, their barrels whirring to life. Through the targeting screen, he saw the Vorn ships weaving closer. A blast of red energy streaked past, scorching the stellar drift's hull. "They're not messing around," he muttered, locking onto the lead ship. He fired. A burst of blue plasma lit up the void, clipping the enemy's wing. It spiraled but didn't stop. The ship rocked again as another blast hit. Sparks rained from the ceiling, and Milo's voice shouted, "Shields at half. Jace, do something." Jace gritted his teeth. The Vorn were fast, but he'd dealt with fast before. He remembered a trick from his mining days, using the environment. "Nia, swing us toward that big asteroid, the one with the craters," he yelled into the comms. Nia didn't argue. The stellar drift banked hard, engines screaming. The Vorn followed, their shots grazing the ship. Jace waited, timing it just right. As they passed the asteroid, he fired, not at the enemy, but at the rock itself. The cannon blast shattered its surface, sending a storm of debris into the Vorn's path. Two ships swerved, crashing into each other in a fiery explosion. The third pulled back, damaged but still alive. The bridge erupted in cheers. Tor slapped Jace on the back as he returned, nearly knocking him over. "Crazy human," he laughed. Milo nodded, a rare smile breaking through. "Good thinking, kid." Jace caught his breath, then looked at Lyra. She stared at him, her eyes wide with something new, respect, maybe even awe. "You, strong," she said softly. But the celebration didn't last. Nia's scanner beeped again. "That third ship's retreating, but it's sending a signal. They'll be back with more." Milo's smile faded. "Then we need answers. Lyra, what's in that pouch?" Lyra hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a crystal, no bigger than a fist, glowing with a deep green light. It pulsed like a living thing, casting shadows across the bridge. "This," she said, holding it up, "power. Life. Death." Jace stared, feeling a chill. "What does it do?" Lyra's face darkened. "Vorn want it. Control all." She closed her hand around it, her voice firm. "We stop them." Jace met her gaze, seeing the fire in her eyes. He'd fixed her leg, earned her trust. Now, he realized, they were in this together, human and alien against a threat bigger than either of them. The stellar drift drifted on, battered but unbroken. The Vorn were out there, regrouping. Jace didn't know what the crystal could do, but he knew one thing, humans didn't back down. And with Lyra by his side, he felt ready for whatever came next. The stellar drift coasted through the asteroid field, its hull still smoking from the Vorn's attack. The bridge was quiet now, the crew gathered around the table where Lyra held the glowing green crystal. Its light pulsed steadily, casting an eerie glow on their faces. Jace stood beside her, his arms crossed, trying to piece together what they'd gotten into. The Vorn wanted this thing bad enough to kill for it, and Lyra's words, power, life, death, echoed in his mind. Milo leaned forward, his gray beard catching the crystal's light. "So, what is it, exactly? A weapon? A battery?" Lyra set the crystal down gently, her golden fingers trembling slightly. She took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Old. From my people. Long ago, we make it. Give energy. Grow food. Build worlds." Her voice softened, almost sad. "But, too much power. Can break. Can kill." Jace raised an eyebrow. "So it's an energy source? Like a supercharged generator?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. But more. If wrong hands, all gone." She made a sweeping gesture, mimicking an explosion. Nia whistled low. "Sounds like a planet buster. No wonder the Vorn want it." Tor scratched his head, still holding his frying pan. "Why not destroy it, then? If it's so dangerous. Lyra's yellow eyes narrowed. Cannot. Too strong. My people hide it. I guard it. Jay studied her, noticing the way she squared her shoulders. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a protector, carrying a burden bigger than any of them had guessed. Okay, he said, so we keep it from the Vorn. But we can't fight them forever. We need a plan. Milo nodded. He's right. That last ship got away. They'll bring friends. We need to hide this thing where they'll never find it. Nia tapped the scanner screen. There's a nebula a few hours from here, thick gas clouds, messes with sensors. Could buy us time. Jace grinned. Perfect. I've got an idea to make sure they lose the trail. He led the crew to the cargo bay, where Lyra's ship sat tethered. The golden hull gleamed, even with its dents and scorch marks. We rigged this thing with a decoy, Jace explained, pulling out a spare power cell from his toolkit. I'll tweak it to mimic the crystal's energy signal. We cut it loose in the nebula, let the Vorn chase a ghost. Tor chuckled. Sneaky. I like it. Lyra tilted her head, watching Jace work. You, smart, she said, a faint smile breaking through her worry. Jace got to it, his hands moving fast. He wired the power cell into the ship's core, adjusting its output to pulse like the crystal's glow. Lyra hovered nearby, pointing out parts of her ship's tech when he asked. Her knowledge surprised him, circuits that bent light, systems that hummed with energy he couldn't quite understand. Together, they turned the wreck into a convincing fake. Your people built some wild stuff, Jace said, wiping grease from his hands. Lyra's smile faded. Yes. Wild, and lost. The stellar drift reached the nebula as the sun dipped below a distant planet's horizon, painting the gas clouds in shades of purple and red. Nia guided the ship in, the thick mist swallowing them whole. Jace and Tor released the decoy, watching it drift away on the viewscreen. Its fake signal blinked, strong and steady. That's our bait, Jace said. Now we wait. Hours passed, tense and silent. Then the scanner pinged. 3 Vorn ships streaked into the nebula, their red-lined hulls cutting through the haze. They locked onto the decoy and fired, obliterating it in a flash of light. Milo smirked. They bought it. Good work, Jace. The crew relaxed, but Lyra didn't. She stared at the crystal, her fingers tracing its edges. They come again, she whispered. They know I live. Jace sat beside her, the green glow reflecting in his eyes. Why you? What's special about this crystal to your people? Lyra hesitated, then spoke slowly. Long ago, we use it. Make life good. But some want more. Want war. Crystal, change. Become danger. My family swear to hide it. I last one. Her voice broke. Vorn find us. Take all. I run. Jace felt a pang in his chest. She'd lost everything, her home, her people, and still fought to keep this thing safe. You're not alone now, he said firmly. We're in this with you. Lyra looked at him, her yellow eyes softening. You, not like Vorn. You help. Why? Jace shrugged. Humans don't give up. And I don't leave people behind. Before she could reply, Nia's voice cut through. Captain, we've got a problem. That third ship, it's back. And it's not alone. The viewscreen showed 5 Vorn ships emerging from the nebula's edge, their weapons powering up. Milo cursed. They didn't buy it for long. Battle stations. Jace grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her to the turret bay. You know their ships. Tell me how to hit them. She nodded, her fear replaced by focus. As the stellar drift shook under enemy fire, they manned the cannons together. Lyra pointed out weak spots, glowing red joints where the Vorn ships were vulnerable. Jace fired, his shots precise, guided by her sharp eyes. One ship exploded, then another. The crew fought hard, Nia weaving through the nebula, Tor firing from the second turret, Milo shouting orders. But the Vorn pressed closer, their numbers overwhelming. A blast rocked the bridge, and the lights flickered. "Shields are down," Nia yelled. Jace glanced at Lyra, her face set with determination. "We can't lose," she said, clutching the crystal. "Not yet." Jace's mind raced. The crystal's power, could they use it? He didn't know how, but he knew one thing: humans always found a way. "Lyra," he said, "tell me everything you know about that thing. Fast." She nodded, and as the battle raged, they huddled together, plotting a move that could change everything. The stellar drift shuddered as Vorn energy blasts tore through the nebula's swirling clouds. Alarms blared, and the bridge was a chaos of flashing lights and shouting voices. Jace and Lyra crouched behind the turret controls, the green crystal glowing between them. Smoke stung Jace's eyes, but he kept his focus on Lyra. "Tell me how it works," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We're out of options." Lyra's golden hands trembled as she held the crystal up. Feel," she said, struggling with the words. "Feel us. Mind. Heart. Turn on." She tapped her temple, then her chest. Jace frowned, piecing it together. "It's not just a power source, it's alive. Like it reads you?" She nodded quickly. "Yes. My people, talk to it. Make it work. But need strong will." Another blast rocked the ship, and Nia's voice crackled over the comms. "Jace, we're dead if you don't do something." Milo roared from the bridge, "Turrets are useless, they're too close." Jace gritted his teeth. The Vorn ships loomed on the view screen, 5 black predators circling their prey. He looked at Lyra, her yellow eyes wide but fierce. "Strong will, huh? Let's see what it's got." He took the crystal from her, its warmth pulsing against his palms. It felt alive, buzzing with energy that tingled up his arms. "What do I do?" he asked. Lyra placed her hand over his, her cool touch grounding him. "Think. Want. It hear you." Jace closed his eyes, blocking out the noise, the explosions, the crew's shouts, the ship's groans. He pictured the Vorn ships retreating, the stellar drift safe. "Get us out of here," he thought, pouring every ounce of stubbornness he had into it. The crystal flared, its green light bursting so bright it filled the turret bay. Lyra gasped, and Jace felt a jolt, like a spark jumping from his mind to the stone. The ship lurched, not from an attack, but from a sudden surge of power. Engines at double output. Nia yelled, stunned. "What did you do?" Jace opened his eyes, grinning. Gave it a push. The stellar drift shot forward, weaving through the nebula with speed it shouldn't have had. The Vorn ships hesitated, then gave chase, their red weapons glowing hot. Lyra squeezed Jace's hand. "It work. But, they follow." Jace nodded. "Then we outsmart them." "Nia, head for that asteroid cluster, tight formation." Nia obeyed, steering the ship into a maze of spinning rocks. The Vorn closed in, firing wildly. Jace and Lyra stayed at the turret, the crystal still glowing in his grip. "Can it do more?" he asked. Lyra bit her lip. "Yes. But, danger. Too much, it break all." Jace weighed the risk. They couldn't keep running, the ship was battered, shields gone. "Tell me how to aim it," he said. "We'll hit them, not us." Lyra guided him, her voice quick and sharp. "Think small. One ship. Stop it." Jace focused again, picturing the lead Vorn ship stalling, its engines dying. The crystal pulsed, and a faint green wave rippled out. Seconds later, the enemy ship slowed, its red lines flickering out. It drifted, dead in space, as the others swerved to avoid it. Tor whooped over the comms. One down. But the victory was short. The remaining Vorn regrouped, their shots slamming into the stellar drift's hull. A panel exploded near Jace, showering him with sparks. He shielded Lyra, his side stinging from the heat. "We can't take much more," he muttered. Lyra's eyes darted to the crystal. "Together," she said. "We stronger." She gripped his hand tighter, her mind brushing his like a whisper. Jace nodded, trusting her. They held the crystal between them, its light blending their wills. Stop them, they thought as one, Jace's grit, Lyra's resolve. The green glow erupted again, this time a focused beam. It struck the closest Vorn ship, and its hull crumpled like paper, imploding in silence. The others scattered, firing blindly as they retreated into the nebula. The crew cheered, but Jace barely heard it. His head spun, and Lyra slumped against him, both drained from the effort. The crystal dimmed, its power spent for now. Milo stormed into the bay, his face red. "What was that? You two nearly blew us apart." Jace managed a weak grin. "Saved us, didn't it?" Milo huffed, but his eyes softened. "Yeah. Guess it did." Nia called from the bridge. "They're gone, for now. But the ship's a wreck. We need repairs." Lyra straightened, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "Safe place. I know." She tapped the crystal lightly. "Old home. Hide there." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Your people's base." She nodded. "Lost. But strong. Vorn not find." Milo crossed his arms. "How far?" Lyra pointed to the scanner, showing a faint signal beyond the nebula. "Close. One day." Jace felt a flicker of hope. "Then we go. Fix the ship, figure out this crystal. Together." Lyra met his gaze, a spark of trust shining through her weariness. "Together," she echoed. As the stellar drift limped toward Lyra's coordinates, Jace sat with her in the bay, the crystal resting between them. He'd started this by fixing her leg, a simple act of kindness. Now they were fighting side by side, their fates tied to a power neither fully understood. The Vorn weren't done, he could feel it. But with Lyra's strength and his stubborn streak, they had a chance. The stars stretched out ahead, endless and unknown, and Jace knew this was only the beginning. The stellar drift crept through space, its engines coughing from the strain of the last battle. The nebula faded behind them, replaced by a faint speck on the scanner, Lyra's safe place. Jace sat in the cargo bay, his toolkit open as he patched a leaking fuel line. The ship was a mess, scorched panels, flickering lights, but he'd kept worse alive. Lyra sat nearby, her golden skin dull from exhaustion, the crystal glowing faintly in her lap. She'd barely spoken since the fight, her yellow eyes fixed on the green light. Jace wiped his hands and sat beside her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Tired. Crystal, hard to use." Jace glanced at it, still feeling its buzz from when they'd wielded it together. "It saved us. That's what matters." Lyra's lips twitched into a small smile. "You brave. Not like my people. We fear it." Jace shrugged. "Humans don't scare easy. We figure things out." He tapped the crystal lightly. "Like this. We'll learn it." Lyra's smile grew, and she leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his. "You teach me brave," she said softly. Jace felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the ship's heat. "And you teach me smart," he replied. "Deal?" Before she could answer, Nia's voice crackled over the comms. We're here. You'll want to see this. Jace and Lyra hurried to the bridge. The view screen showed an asteroid, gray and jagged, floating alone in the void. But as they neared, a shimmer rippled across its surface, a hidden shield parting to reveal a docking bay carved into the rock. Old home, Lyra said, her voice thick with memory. Milo raised an eyebrow. A secret base? Your people don't mess around. Lyra nodded. Safe. Strong. Vorn not know. Nia guided the ship in, the bay doors sealing behind them with a hiss. The interior was vast, smooth walls lined with glowing panels, air cool and clean. It felt alive, humming with faint energy. Jace whistled. This place is incredible. They stepped out, the crew stretching after days cramped aboard. Tor hefted his frying pan, eyeing the shadows. Quiet. Too quiet. Lyra led them deeper, her limp gone now, confidence returning. My people build this. Long ago. Hide from war. She touched a wall, and a panel lit up, projecting a map of tunnels and chambers. Here we fix. Rest. Jace grinned. Perfect. Let's get to work. He and the crew split up, Nia checking the ship's systems, Tor scavenging for supplies, Milo guarding the entrance. Jace stayed with Lyra, heading to a repair bay she'd marked on the map. It was packed with tools and machines, alien but familiar enough. Jackpot, Jace muttered, running his hands over a sleek workbench. I can fix the drift here. Lyra watched him, curious. You love this. Fix things. Jace nodded, pulling a welding torch from the rack. Always have. Machines make sense. People. Not so much. She laughed, a light, musical sound. You make sense. To me. Jace paused, meeting her gaze. The crystal's glow reflected in her eyes, and for a moment, the galaxy felt small, just the two of them. They worked together, Jace repairing the ship's hull while Lyra powered up the base's defenses. She showed him how to sync the crystal with the shield generators, her fingers deft on the controls. Listen, she said, guiding his hand to a panel. Feel it. Jace did, a pulse, like the crystal was alive, responding to them. Wild, he breathed. We could hold off an army with this. But peace didn't last. As Jace welded a final plate, the base shook. Dust fell from the ceiling, and Milo's voice barked over the comms. Incoming. Vorn ships, 5 of them. Jace dropped the torch, grabbing Lyra's arm. They found us. How? Lyra's face paled. Crystal. They track it. They raced to the command center, where Nia pulled up scans. 5 Vorn ships hovered outside, their red weapons glowing. Shields holding, she said, but not for long. Milo cursed. We're trapped. Jace stared at the screen, his mind racing. No. We fight smart. He turned to Lyra. The crystal, can it power the base's weapons? Lyra hesitated. Yes. But, danger. Too much, it break. Jace clenched his fists. We've got no choice. They'll blast through eventually. She nodded, resolve hardening her features. Together. They rushed to a weapon console, the crystal slotting into its core. Its green light flared, and the base's turrets hummed to life, massive cannons hidden in the asteroid's surface. Jace manned the controls, Lyra beside him. Focus, she said, her hand on his. Like before. They willed the crystal to fire, and green beams lanced out, striking a Vorn ship. It exploded in a fireball, debris scattering across the void. The others fired back, red blasts pounding the shield. Stronger. Jace urged, sweat beading on his forehead. The crystal pulsed, and another beam took down a second ship. But the strain showed. Cracks spiderwebbed across the crystal's surface, and Lyra winced. Too much, she gasped. Jace pulled back, heart pounding. We've got 3 left. We can't stop now. Nia shouted, they're breaching the shield. A red bolt slipped through, blasting a wall near Tor. He ducked, swearing loudly. Jace looked at Lyra, her face set with determination despite the pain. One more, he said. We can do it. She nodded, and they pushed the crystal again. A final beam roared out, obliterating a third ship. The last 2 retreated, vanishing into space. The base fell silent, the crystal dimming, cracked but intact. Milo slumped against the wall. Crazy kids. You pulled it off. Jace grinned, breathless. Team effort. Lyra leaned against him, exhausted but alive. You, strong, she whispered. Jace squeezed her hand. So are you. The Vorn were gone, for now, but Jace knew they'd be back. The base was their refuge, but the crystal's secrets were only beginning to unfold. The command center of the hidden base was quiet, save for the faint hum of the shield generators. The Vorn ships had retreated, their red trails fading into the void, but the air still crackled with tension. Jace leaned against the weapon console, his hands smudged with grease and sweat dripping down his face. The cracked green crystal sat in its slot, its light dim but steady. Lyra stood beside him, her golden skin shimmering faintly, her breathing shallow from the strain of their last push. Milo paced the room, his boots thudding on the metal floor. They'll be back, he growled. We bloodied their nose, but they're not done. Nia nodded, her eyes on the scanner. They're regrouping, more ships incoming. We've got hours, maybe less. Tor hefted his frying pan, grinning despite the odds. Let them come. I'll cook them up. Jace ignored the chatter, his focus on the crystal. It had saved them twice now, first on the ship, then here, but it was breaking. He could feel it, a faint tremor under his fingers when he touched it. Lyra, he said, we can't keep fighting like this. It's too risky. She met his gaze, her yellow eyes sharp with worry. Yes. Too much, it die. We die. He rubbed his chin, thinking. Humans didn't win by brute force, they won by being clever. What if we don't use it to attack? What if we turn it into something else? Lyra tilted her head, confused. Else? Jace pointed to the shield controls. A shield. A big one. Strong enough to keep them out for good. Her eyes widened. Shield, yes. My people try. Never finish. Jace grinned. Then we finish it. Together. He pulled the crystal from the console, its cracked surface catching the light. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. Show me. They moved to the base's engineering bay, a sprawling room filled with glowing machines and half-built tech. Jace's hands itched, this was his playground. He found a shield amplifier, its circuits alien but familiar enough, and got to work. Lyra explained as he tinkered. Crystal, give power. But need focus. Mind strong. She tapped her head again, like before. Jace wired the crystal into the amplifier, his hands moving fast. So we tell it what to do. Like a team. He connected the last cable, and the machine hummed, the crystal's glow spreading through its core. Let's try it. They held the crystal together, their hands overlapping. Jace pictured a wall, solid, unbreakable, wrapping the asteroid in safety. Lyra's mind joined his, her thoughts sharp and clear, like a blueprint overlaying his rough idea. The crystal flared, green light surging into the amplifier. Outside, the base's shield thickened, its shimmer turning solid, a dome of energy rippling across the asteroid. Nia's voice crackled over the comms. Shields at full strength. Stronger than before. Milo grunted. Good. 'Cause they're here. The view screen showed 7 Vorn ships, bigger than the last, their weapons blazing red. Bolts slammed into the shield, but it held, absorbing the hits like a sponge. Jace whooped. It's working. But Lyra frowned, her hand tightening on his. Feel wrong. Jace sensed it too, a strain in the crystal, deeper than before. Cracks spread faster, glowing hot. It's overloading, he said. We pushed it too hard. The shield flickered, and a Vorn shot punched through, blasting a crater near the docking bay. Tor yelled, they're breaking in. Jace's mind raced. We need more control. Something's missing. Lyra stared at the crystal, then gasped. Old story. My people say, 2 hearts. 2 minds. Balance. She grabbed his hand, pressing it to her chest, then hers to his. We join. More strong. Jace blinked, feeling her heartbeat, fast, alien, but steady. Like a circuit. Closing the loop. She nodded fiercely. Yes. Try. They held the crystal between them, their hands locked, hearts pounding in sync. Jace focused not just on the shield, but on Lyra, her strength, her will, her trust in him. She did the same, her thoughts flowing into his like a river. The crystal blazed, its cracks glowing white-hot, then sealing shut. A wave of green energy erupted, reinforcing the shield into an impenetrable wall. The Vorn fired again, but their shots bounced off, useless. The shield pulsed, alive with their combined will. Nia shouted, they're pulling back. We did it. The enemy ships turned, vanishing into space. The crew cheered, but Jace and Lyra stayed still, breathless, the crystal humming between them. Milo clapped Jace on the shoulder. You're a lunatic, kid. But it worked. Jace grinned, but his eyes stayed on Lyra. We worked. She smiled, tired but bright. 2 hearts. Stronger. The crystal's glow softened, stable now, its power reshaped by their bond. Later, in the quiet of the engineering bay, Jace studied the crystal. It's not just a tool, he said. It's us. What we make it. Lyra nodded. Heal. Not break. She touched his arm, her skin warm now, not cool. You change it. Like you change me. Jace felt a spark, not from the crystal, but from her. Guess we're stuck together now. Nia interrupted over the comms. Don't get comfy. Scanner's picking up something, big. Not Vorn. Different. Jace and Lyra exchanged a look. The crystal pulsed, as if sensing it too. Trouble? He asked. Lyra's face hardened. Maybe. Or, help. They headed to the bridge, the crew gathering as a new shadow loomed on the horizon, not hostile, but unknown. The Vorn were beaten, but the galaxy wasn't done with them. Jace tightened his grip on the crystal, Lyra's hand beside his. Whatever came next, they'd face it, human grit and alien wisdom, a team no one could break. The stellar drift rested in the hidden base, its patched hull glowing under the asteroid's reinforced shield. The Vorn were gone, driven off by the crystal's power, but the air buzzed with a new tension. Jace stood on the bridge, Lyra at his side, as the crew stared at the view screen. A massive shape emerged from the void, not the jagged black of Vorn ships, but a sleek, silver vessel, its curves smooth and graceful. It didn't fire. It just waited. Nia's fingers danced over the scanner. No weapons active. It's broadcasting something. Milo frowned, his gray beard twitching. A trap. Lyra shook her head, her golden skin catching the crystal's faint glow. Not Vorn. Feel familiar. She touched the crystal, still held between her and Jace, and its light pulsed, as if answering the signal. Jace squinted at the ship. "Let's hear it." Nia flipped a switch, and a voice filled the bridge, calm, deep, speaking in clicks and tones like Lyra's language. Her eyes widened, a gasp escaping her lips. "My people," she whispered. "Alive." The voice shifted to rough English. "Survivors of the Vorn War. We seek the Guardian. We seek the crystal." Lyra clutched Jace's arm, hope lighting her face. "They live. Not all lost." Jace grinned, relief washing over him. "Guess you're not the last one anymore." Milo crossed his arms. "They're late to the party. We've been fighting for that thing." Tor chuckled, twirling his frying pan. "Maybe they'll cook better than me." The silver ship sent a shuttle, docking smoothly in the bay. Jace and Lyra led the crew to meet it, the crystal glowing brighter with every step. The hatch opened, and 3 figures stepped out, golden-skinned like Lyra, their silver suits shimmering. The leader, tall and stern, bowed slightly. "I am Kale. We tracked the crystal's energy. You wield it well, Guardian." His yellow eyes flicked to Jace. "And you, human." "Unexpected." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "I am Lyra. Last Guardian. This is Jace. He saved me. Save Crystal." Kale studied them, then the crystal, its cracks healed by their bond. "We thought it lost. The Vorn destroyed our worlds, but some escaped. We rebuild, far away. The crystal, it calls us home." Jace handed it over, but Kale shook his head. "No. It choose you." "Both." Lyra frowned. "Both?" Kale nodded. "2 hearts. 2 minds. We see its power, shield, not weapon. You make it new." Jace felt a jolt through their connection, Lyra's surprise mirroring his. "So it's ours?" he asked. Kale's lips curved. "Yours to guard. Ours to share." The crew gathered as Kale explained. His people had fled the Vorn decades ago, hiding in a distant system. The crystal's burst of energy, when Jace and Lyra fused their wills, had reached them, a beacon of hope. "We come to fight," Kale said. "But you win already. Now, we ask help. Vorn grow strong again. We need warriors." Milo scratched his beard. "We're miners, not soldiers." Jace smirked. "Speak for yourself, Captain." "I'm in." Lyra squeezed his hand, her resolve clear. "I fight. For my people." Nia shrugged. "Beats dodging asteroids." Tor banged his pan. "I'll fry them." Milo sighed, but a grin broke through. "Fine. Guess we're a team now." Kale's shuttle took them to the silver ship, a marvel of tech, curved halls, glowing walls, engines that purred like a living thing. Jace marveled at it, his mechanic's heart racing. "This beats the drift any day," he muttered. Lyra laughed, a sound that warmed him. "You fix this too?" He winked. "Give me a wrench, and I'll try." In the ship's core, Kale showed them a map, stars sprawling across a holographic screen. "Vorn gather here," he said, pointing to a red cluster. "They want power. Like crystal. We stop them." Jace studied the map, then the crystal in his hands. "We've got this. They won't know what hit them." Lyra nodded, her voice firm. "Together." The crew trained with Kale's people, blending human grit with alien skill. Jace and Lyra worked the crystal, testing its limits, shields, pulses, even a light that healed small wounds. It responded to them like a friend, their bond its heartbeat. "It's us," Jace said one night, sitting with Lyra in the ship's quiet observation deck. "We make it good." She leaned against him, her skin warm now, alive. You make me good. Days later, they launched, the silver ship cutting through space toward the Vorn's lair. The stellar drift followed, patched and proud. Jace stood with Lyra at the helm, the crystal glowing between them. Ready? He asked. She smiled, fierce and bright. Ready. The stars stretched ahead, endless and wild, a canvas for their fight.